Greetings, denizens of the Empire. It's Jabara here. Oftentimes, when we hear of early trade between Europeans and Africans, there is a recurring and unfortunate theme. Slaves for guns and vice versa. Kingdoms and empires of the West African coast grew wealthy and powerful from the acquisition of guns that they used to their advantage against their enemies, and unfortunately, these weapons came at the expense of the sale of human beings, the only commodity that Europeans seemed to want in exchange, as there was a shortage of labor in their New World plantations. Oftentimes, this led to a perpetual state of African kings selling slaves in exchange for firearms and subsequently using the firearms to go to war, capture more slaves, and trade them for more firearms, and repeat. One question, however, has lingered with me for a very long time, and I finally got an answer. With so many ancient and advanced blacksmithing traditions of West Africa, why didn't they just make their own guns? Well, you may be surprised by the answer. Flintlock muskets first began to appear in West Africa in the 16th century, and due to a large quantity of said guns coming from the Danish trade, the term Dane gun became synonymous with early African firearms, whether they originated in Europe or were locally manufactured by Africans themselves. For the sake of this video, however, we are going to focus exclusively on those locally produced, repaired, or modified by African blacksmiths. The Kingdom of Benin had a strong tradition of guilds that were held in high esteem by the royal court. Two distinct guilds emerged during the Oba dynasty of Benin. The first one was known as Igun Nekuha, which was founded during the reign of Oba Oguola. The second was known as Igun Neyain Nugie, established during the reign of Oba Esigie. The primary purpose of these guilds was to produce iron and steel weapons of war of all varieties, including swords, spears, and arrowheads. However, in an effort to reduce the dependence on European gun imports, Oba Akingbuda ordered his guild at Igun Ngboha to be reorganized specifically for the purpose of locally manufacturing muskets and cannons. To present day, 3 cannons currently exist in the British Museum that were crafted by Bini blacksmiths, 2 of bronze and 1 of iron. Several British, Portuguese, and even Chinese cannons were also looted from Oba's palace in 1897 and were likely used as models for reference for this indigenous Nigerian arms industry. The replication of these guns was so precise that even the Portuguese Order of Christ symbol was engraved on them by Bini blacksmiths, despite Benin never being a Christian state at any point in pre-colonial times. In the 19th century, this local guild of blacksmiths seems to have still been in existence as outlined in this account by Captain James Faulkner. It excited my surprise to see here 2 or 3 small pieces of cannon of British and Portuguese manufacture, but they were not mounted and had perhaps been procured as models for imitation, as the country abounds in iron. But for the expense attendant on working the mines, there is, comparatively speaking, very little wrought to perfection. I saw, however, some swords of their own manufacture, which were very well turned out of hand, and was credibly informed they could make muskets, with the exception of the lock, in great perfection. It is also important to note that the lock was the same part of the weapon that the Japanese struggled to imitate when firearms were first introduced to them by the Portuguese in the 16th century, as the technique of manufacturing a helix bolt was unique to European blacksmiths. The blacksmiths of Benin, however, were not the only people of West Africa to manufacture their own firearms, nor did they do it at the largest scale. But before we cover that though, I'd like to thank Happy Hippo Herbals for sponsoring this video. Kratom is an alternative medicine that I had the privilege of trying out for the very first time courtesy of Happy Hippo Herbals, and I have to say, I'm very grateful to have introduced into my life. Kratom is a plant native to Southeast Asia and has been used by indigenous peoples of the region for centuries. After trying it out for myself, the best way I can describe its effect on me is a combination of feeling relaxed and mellow all the while feeling focused and energetic. Similar to the energetic effects of coffee or tea, except feeling generally calm and content at the same time, and without crashing or feeling dehydrated afterwards. I pretty much just stop focusing on problems, have a general sense of well-being, and just overall happy vibes without feeling overwhelmed. It's exactly what I need when I'm tirelessly conducting research for new content and editing my videos. Bear in mind, however, that Kratom is a lifestyle product that is unregulated by the FDA, so it's important to do your own research about the benefits and the risks. So, just like anything else, controlling portions and being responsible are really all there is to it. I can confidently tell you, however, that it works great for me and I highly recommend it. You can receive a 15% discount on all Happy Hippo Herbals products using my referral link down below or my coupon code FN10 at checkout. It'll definitely help to bring some positivity into your life, all the while helping support my channel. So anyway, back to the video. The Wasalu Empire was a short-lived state that existed in what are now Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Ivory Coast. It was founded by Samori Touré, a powerful and influential Mandinka Muslim. This upstart commander sought to build an empire from the ground up, fully equipped with a modern army. His units were based on the military organization of the Mali Empire and other Mande polities. He succeeded in establishing a professional full-time corps of highly trained soldiers, all wielding muskets and modern breech-loaded rifles. Samori's nascent empire had a total of 50 breech-loading rifles and 36 were carried by a special guard. In 1891, he began importing hundreds of rifles from the newly formed state of Liberia and later the British. He used this military advantage to conquer small neighboring kingdoms and states, and after defeating a French force in 1891, he began importing more weapons due to the increased European threat. By November of the same year, he had stockpiled 2,000 repeating rifles, and after the defeat of the aforementioned French column, his army consisted of 1,000 cavalry and 7,000 infantry. All 1,000 of his cavalry, and approximately half of his infantry, were equipped with these weapons. Interestingly enough, despite the fact that many of these weapons were captured from the French after battle, some were manufactured locally by Wasalu blacksmiths. In fact, after every battle, all bullet casings were collected and turned in for recycling into new rounds, a practice that is still in fact conducted today at shooting ranges in the United States military, where service members are ordered to collect or police up all expended brass casings. The Wasalu Empire took it a step further, however, in the fact that it included the expended rounds themselves that were embedded into objects such as trees. This was no doubt due to the rarity of copper and zinc in West Africa, which contributed to the expense of importing the necessary resources for their arms industry. Older style muskets and projectiles could be found to be made locally as well, since trade guns were sold to Africans at the time, which were lower quality and were often dangerous to use or required frequent repairs. Gunpowder was locally manufactured in West Africa in large quantities, but was generally considered to be of lower quality than the European variety, possibly due to the technique of corning being unknown to Africans, a process of moistening gunpowder into a paste with spirits and allowing it to dry into balls before crushing it into grains once more prior to firing, thus creating a more even and consistent burn for the explosive force. However, corning may have been known to West Africans but deliberately ignored, simply because weaker powder would have been far safer to use on these weapons, since their barrels were prone to bursting. In other words, bad muskets needed bad powder. While sulfur was imported from Sudan, all other components of gunpowder were obtained locally. King Behanzin of the Dahomey Kingdom informed a French mission that he had succeeded in manufacturing his own guns and gunpowder. The French reacted in disbelief that the African king had the capability of doing so. However, in 1892, after the French invaded the small kingdom, they found a large quantity of gunpowder, ammo, cartridges, rockets, electric batteries, and several other tools that were needed in the manufacture and repair of cartridges and firearms. They also found 5,000 kilograms of gunpowder, much of which was neatly sealed away in clay jars and barrels. In the 18th and 19th centuries, the neighboring Ashanti locally manufactured brass blunderbusses, which they called humu or ohum. They also had a thriving blacksmith trade completely dedicated to the repair of firearms, and in some cases, the complete manufacture of new barrels, locks, and stocks. Additionally, gunpowder was locally manufactured within the Ashanti Kingdom. Tight cordage was wrapped around barrels to prevent them from bursting, and metal parts were covered in tin and leather to protect them from the corrosion in the rainy and humid climate of the Gold Coast. Coverings of this type are believed to have been supplied by the Ashanti government, and weapons would have been regularly inspected by high-ranking officials to ensure proper maintenance was being conducted by the soldiers. Failure to properly maintain a weapon resulted in heavy fines. So, as mentioned before, guns shipped to Africa known as trade guns were often of low quality and prone to failure. Their durability was not tested to military standards, or what is known as proofing, a process in which the components are tested under heavy pressure to ensure their integrity is up to standard. Trade guns were not intended for repetitive use or rapid firing. Contrary to popular belief, the bulk of muskets imported to Africa were not for warfare, but for use among the common folk for purposes of hunting, self-defense, crop protection, and funeral ceremonies. With that being said, numerous blacksmiths throughout West Africa took up the trade of offering repair services for muskets rather than local manufacture, as it was often much cheaper to purchase complete firearms and then repair them afterwards. The Awka Ibom region of present-day Nigeria has been known for many centuries as a place of blacksmiths. The people here manufactured a type of flint gun in pre-colonial times known as the Egbe Cham. They were also able to make Nkponala, which was a small indigenous cannon, and a more complex version which they called Kurutu or Egbe Ndu. The latter cannon was manufactured in the late 19th century, just prior to the annexation of Nigeria into the British Empire. However, the trade has been systematically eradicated by the British colonial administration, and the final nail in the coffin came after the Nigerian Civil War. Nonetheless, the blacksmiths of this region have continued their work, albeit for manufacture of iron implements of non-military purposes. They are renowned for their skills in this industry so much that the city in which they operate out of is known as Nkwere Opia Egbe, or in English, Nkwere, the gunmakers. Unfortunately, these traditions have begun to fizzle out in recent years due to lack of government support, and instead, a growing interest in the region's petroleum industry is prevailing. In conclusion, firearms in pre-colonial West Africa were primarily owned and used by common folk, and were indigenously repaired and manufactured locally. The blacksmiths of West Africa had the tools and tactical knowledge to do so, and succeeded in making guns of all varieties throughout the centuries. Simple flintlock muskets, gunpowder, cannons, rockets, and even breech-loaded repeaters. However, importing guns was always a cheaper alternative, and local initiatives to eliminate dependence on European trade developed in various independent kingdoms of the region. And though these industries had some success, they never took off on a scale comparable to Japan or India, most likely due to the cheaper price and ease of access through trade rather than local manufacturing. Additionally, armies fully equipped with gunpowder weapons was something completely new to West Africa, and those who adopted them on a mass scale were the exception and not the rule. The Dahomey and Ashanti kingdoms were among the few. Asia, however, is quite literally the birthplace of gunpowder, and thus adopting and incorporating European technological advancements into the weapon systems was not only a more natural process, but more necessary due to the already widespread use of gunpowder weaponry on the continent. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please comment letting me know what you think, and while you're at it, maybe consider hitting the like button, sharing the video, or subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so you never miss any new videos. For sources, check out my website, linked below. If you'd like to support future projects, you can do so there as well, or by clicking the join button below, or by becoming a patron. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching as usual, and always remember, we don't come from nothing.